Welcome to Native Calgarian. Oki, Naganago, Mekoche, Chestoko Maki. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use she and her pronouns. Native Calgarian is being recorded on the lands of the Niitsitapi, which is the Blackfoot Confederacy. The Blackfoot south of the imposed U.S.-Canadian border are the Blackfeet. North of the border are the Siksika, Gunray, and Bagani of the Confederacy. These lands are Treaty 7, signed September 22nd, 1877, with signatures that include the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Stoney Nakoda of the Wesley Chiniki Bearspaw Nations, and the Dene from the Tsuut'ina Nation. I acknowledge all First Nations, Métis, Inuit, status and non-status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. All non-Indigenous are treaty partners with the government signing on your behalf. I honor the Blackfoot as the elders and members have been so kind to me on my Red Road journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name. I was born here in Calgary, or in Blackfoot Mohkinstsis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name which has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. My mother is Northern Slavey Dene, or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act imposed status card by the Canadian government says Yellow Knives Dene. My father is so Canadian. I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution while having an Indian Act imposed status card. I acknowledge my Dene lineage and that I was born in Calgary, but my family is not part of the Treaty 7 signatories. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Hare people, also called the Great Bear Lake people in Treaty 11. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene Nation is a visitor to this area of Clincho Tine Indahe in Satu Dene, meaning many horse town, named after the Calgary Stampede. Land acknowledgements are critical for creating a safer space for all Indigenous, as well as honoring the host as a guest and honoring your role as a treaty partner. My humblest apologies to the Blackfoot elders and language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. Any mistakes or misinterpretations will be on me. I encourage questions so that misunderstandings can be cleared up as soon as possible. I do not speak on behalf of all Indigenous, but I share what I know as I walk down my red road. If you're experiencing emotional distress after hearing anything I talk about today and want to talk, the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness helpline is 1-855-242-3310. It is open, it's toll-free, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Non-Indigenous, there are distress lines in your area too. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. I want to say thank you to the previous donors for already showing your support. If you value listening and can afford to give, thank you. For those that cannot afford to give but listen in, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, or you can send in your comments or your questions. I also have a YouTube channel that I would love to have you subscribe. Go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcast, pin posts on social media. I'll give a quick shout out to my super loyal donors, Adam, Agent Indian, Alexandria, Beatrice, Ben, Beth, Brian, Kat, Celine, Christina, Crystal, Diana, Jacqueline, Jana, Jenny, Jessica, Jocelyn, Judy, Karen, Kathy, Kenna, Leah, Lisi, Marisa, Melissa, Morami, Natalie, Nathan, Rebecca, Rochelle, The Sprawl, Shara, Sharon, Tammy, Tiffany, Vanessa, and Veronica. Whew, thank you all for listening and being my Patreon folks. So I'm really happy today. I have a special guest with me. I want to introduce Autumn Eaglespeaker.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you're here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Oki Nidanakawa Utski Bixiaki. Hello, my name is Bluebird Woman, or my English name is Autumn Eaglespeaker. As you may notice, I'm wearing this beautiful, lovely yellow color, which is my favorite color. I feel nervous all of a sudden. That's so weird. I'm from the Blood Reserve. My home is the Gainawa First Nation, which is just in southern Alberta, 2.5 hours south of Calgary. My maternal grandparents are the late Glenn and Leona Eaglespeaker, and my paternal grandparents are Helen and Stanley Williams of Seattle, Washington. My parents are Michael Williams, currently Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and my mom, Diane Eaglespeaker, who resides here in Calgary and is a member of the Blackfoot Confederacy. We are from the All Short Peoples clan, or from the Running Antelope clan of our people. I can date my family, my maternal lineage back 8 generations on my mother's side. I come from a long line of medicine people and healers, and I'm just starting to walk my medicine journey and learning more about herbs and berries and just all these different usages like within our culture, which is pretty cool. Let's see what else. I come from a very huge family. Family's always been very important to me. I have 6 children myself. My oldest is Willow, and then I have twins, Rain and Sky, and then there's Cloud, Thunder, and Rosie. So they span from 23 to 4, age 4. So I am very busy all the time. I decided to COVID homeschool my kids, as you do as well. And so I'm very busy all the time. Yes. Trying to get them onto that. So that's that one part. So yeah, so that's a little bit about that. Let's see, what else can I tell you? So I actually was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. I lived there until I was 16. But every summer from the time I was 8, my grandma and my uncle would drive down to Seattle and pick up my brothers and my cousins and I and bring us back to the reserve, where we'd be like reserve rats for the whole summer, just running around and playing in the bush and swimming like otters all day long. And yeah, so I grew up on the Bloods. I grew up in Seattle. I grew up in the central ghetto district of Seattle and went through the whole housing movement. Sorry, not housing movement, the busing movement, where they exchanged children from different areas of town to try to desegregate. That's what the word I was looking for. So I actually spent a lot of my time in suburban areas growing up, educated with very rich kids, very rich Caucasian kids, and then came back to hang out with all my Black community. I didn't even say that. I am actually half myself. I'm half Blackfoot and half African American. My dad is mixed. He is Seminole and Cherokee. And we've got a little bit of Irish thrown in there too. So I'm a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But I'm all Blackfoot, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah. There's no halving going on here.
Yeah.
It's just all me. So that's the ABCs of me, I guess, in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I always love it when other people kind of tell their background. I mean, we had known each other for quite some, for quite a few years before I actually found out you were half Black. I just thought you and your sister were incredibly good looking and dark. What? Totally normal.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm the same color as the rest of my family. So I was just like, oh yeah, it's who we are.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, I remember finding out that you were part Black, and I'm like, oh man, this brings a whole conversation about Black Lives Matter and activism and that whole thing. And I don't know how far back you want to go, but you were part of the Aboriginal Peoples Commission. Now it's the Indigenous Peoples Commission. And I know I met you really through I Don't Know More back in 2013, really met you. And then, yeah, so we've known each other for a long time, and you've done so much activism. I think a lot of people don't know, when I Don't Know More really started here in Calgary, that you underwent ceremony for that and you arranged that. And you and the other women actually got the rocks and did a sweat and did that work. So I don't know how, why did you decide to do I Don't Know More, and what do you want to share about ceremony about that?
Well, I guess I should maybe dial it back a little bit. So my background in education is political science and Indigenous studies. I am actually 3 credits short currently from my degree. That's a whole other story in itself. But so what led me to that was I was actually working in oil and gas. I was offered a summer job right out of school, and, being a single parent, the lure of money sounds very good without really knowing what you're getting into. And so thus I got thrown into the oil industry. And I had my first job, and then it turned into, they extended my time there, and became a full-time job afterwards. And I did return to finish those last 3 credits as well. And so, yeah, I was working in oil and gas, and I was working in Aboriginal relations, and I was working in community investment, and doing all that stuff, being there, and starting to really understand the level that the community had no say in what was happening to them, and that there was always strings attached to dollars, and that if those strings weren't met, those obligations weren't met by the First Nations, then they didn't receive the funding that should have been coming to them. And so it was really working at Shell. I was working at Shell at the time, when I was on the other side of a protest for the first time, where a First Nation came to give court papers to the company. And it was the most uneasy feeling in my stomach and in my soul. It didn't align at all with who I was and who my purpose in life is. And excuse me. And then that I guess that would have been the spring before Idle No More, because it was ACFN, Athabasca Chip. Or was it MCFN? It was ACFN. It was Athabasca Chip First Nation that came to serve Shell. And it was in regards to money that was, again, owed to them, to the community, overfunding. Just lots of issues there. That's only the tip of the iceberg. I don't want to say that was the issue, but there was lots of issues. Anyway, so leading up to that, there was also changes that were going on in the government. Provincially, the government was changing consultation requirements, and they were meeting with industry about what was going to happen with these changes to First Nations and the requirements, before they were actually meeting with the First Nations about who they were going to affect. And having to sit on that other side and be a representative of an oil and gas company who potentially is going to be endangering my people, it didn't sit in my soul. So, like, I had taken some time off of work, and I'm shaking. My gosh. I took some time off of work, and I was trying to decide what I was going to do. And there was a lot of stuff that was starting on Twitter. I'd been very active on Twitter, on social media, for quite a number of years, and gained a lot of different contacts through the different things that I've been involved in, through the APC, through numerous conferences and conventions, and just meeting people, and so it was through that there was a lot of chatter happening first, through the waves on Twitter, and people talking about the omnibus bills that were coming up that Harper was trying to put through with the Conservative government. And it was just the beginning of it. And so I saw what was happening at the federal level. I saw what was happening at the provincial level, and I felt frozen. I felt frozen as a person, and I felt frozen in my job. And I knew that, 1, I couldn't be there anymore, and 2, I needed to do something about it. So I reached out first to the government organizations here. I reached out to AFN Alberta. I reached out to Treaty 7 at the time, Management Corp, to see if anything was being done, if they were going to be participating in it. And then nothing was being done. And so then I reached out to a few other different people who I personally knew to be activists or involved in volunteerism in the community, and had a good base of people. And so we got together and said, look, we need to spread this message here, because this is going to affect us here too. And so that's literally how it began, was just a phone call to a group of friends. There was actually 7 of us at the time that were firstly involved in organizing the first big protest rally in Calgary. Yeah. Wow.
I know it was a long time ago, but it's unfortunately as relevant today as it was then.
Yes. Yes. And you can see today just how, again, the government at all levels, they don't give a shit about First Nations rights. And the fact that they would go to industry first to discuss something that ultimately would affect our people just sickens and disgusts me.
Yes.
Yeah. So I actually come from a long line, as I said, of different spiritual people. My family are sun dancers. I myself don't walk that road. However, I am a big supporter of it and have been raised in that way. And so when I was undertaking this, one of the big things is that I didn't want to use my family, because I didn't want my family to be that seen that I was, showing favoritism towards my family. And so I purposely did not choose family members. I looked outside of a larger group, and I met with a Stony elder to help to guide the process, to bridge those different gaps, to bring the different nations together. And that was one thing that was really, really important throughout this whole thing, was to unite the people. And so immediately it was, when I talked to my different friends, it was, who do I know in Sutina? Who do I know in Morley? Who do I know in Siksika? Who do I know who's organizing in Brockett? Who do I know? So it wasn't like it was just random people. It was people who already had started to do some legwork, who already had contacts, who already had backgrounds, who cared passionately about different issues that affect their communities too. And so us together, like the little web of the network, just really grew, and we were able to get out that message about coming out to support these issues. And I really don't think that half of the people knew what was really, needing to be discussed, or what an omnibus bill was, but it was just that they knew that it was going to affect them, and they felt that passion, and they, that it's been bubbling for so long, and so many First Nations communities feel it and are just, there's just such a lack, I guess. There's just a lack in every community, and that inaction really helped to fuel a lot of the background behind Idle No More.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Oh,
did you guys get in touch with Sylvia McAdam and the crew from there? How did that come to be?
So right after we started talking about it, we reached out to Sylvia and said, hey, we're Calgary. We're on board with this too. We really want to have a teach-in right away. We're in, like, what can we do? And then they said, okay, we're having a date. Bam, December 12th. December 10th. Oh my gosh, it was 2012 though. December 10th, 2012. That's what it was. So we reached out. It was a telephone conversation with Sylvia, and then just saying, pressing forward, and just there's messages that are going out. And then again, it was like a telephone tree, so we would send messages that way. And, long before, so this was too long before it was easy on social media to be able to share things, to be able to share information. Like, you really had to copy and paste, and try to shorten your URLs to try to put that information out. It was hilarious. Looking back, then it's just like mid-century technology. But that, having that ability to have that social media to spread those messages was really important to all of the Idle No More movement across Canada, North America, and across the globe, right? So what I want to say next is that we always worked with the nations. That was something that was really important. We contacted all of the nations. We said, this is what is going on. This is what our intent is. We want to work with the nations. We want to have people here to represent, because it's not about us. It's not about our words. This is about your issues. And about how it affects us as a people, as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was also really important, you know?
Yep.
And so after that, we had our first ceremony. Our elder said, well, now you need to put your intent down. You have to put prayers on a pipe. And that's exactly what we did. So I offered tobacco on behalf of our group. The people that were able to come out and sweat. It was a long day, starting with going to the mountain to gather the water that we would use, then going to pick the rocks in minus 25, minus 30 degree weather.
Voila.
Yeah, for the sweat lodge. But it's really crazy, not crazy, I shouldn't say crazy. It's amazing that the grandfather rocks, when you choose them and you pray to them, how easily they come to you and how suddenly they're not frozen anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was actually your uncle Casey who taught me to lay tobacco and put a prayer and intention in it. And I'm not like, I tell people, like, I was an atheist, and I'm like, a lot of coincidences sure happened after that. So I know exactly what you mean.
You know, and I do remember telling the elder, like the elder is Cindy Daniels, and I told her, I was like, how are we going to do this? Like, it is cold. The ground is frozen. And she said, you just have to pray. And boy, we did pray.
It's like boot camp.
Yeah, it is, you know, and it was a whole day thing. It was going out, it was putting the offerings, it was gathering all the materials, it was building the fire. It was, you know, waiting for the rocks to be ready. And then by the time we actually went into the lodge, I think it was almost nightfall.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a hard day.
Oh, it was a hard day. And then like 4 amazing, intense, beautiful rounds where you don't leave the sweat lodge at all either. And the things that were showed to me through the lodge make me know that I was on the right path, that me participating in it was really important. Why? Because I was able to bridge many different people to come together to create the movement. I didn't create the movement. There was groups in Sutina that after the conversation happened, they also had different issues that were affecting their people, but they came together to create like their own protest, which took place at Harper's office at Glenmore Landing, which then actually changed their protesting bylaws of the space so that it became illegal to protest there. Yeah, thank you. Business in Calgary. You know, and then the Sutina people coming down as a whole force to join into the march and rally. There was buses from Siksika sent full of people, counselors, elders, children. There were people from the Bloods and Piikani, and there were people from Stoney. Everybody came. Métis Nation. Everybody was present. Everybody was present.
Honestly, though, before that moment, I don't know if I remember there ever being unity like that. So I hope, like, from the bottom of my heart, you understand. Like, it was a huge moment for us as natives, I thought. And I felt really blessed and honored to be in that space at that time. I knew that there was ceremony that was undertaken, and I knew that this was being done in a good way, and that made me happy. And I think it was the first time we really seen allies like really show up. Before, I felt like there was only David Swan, and like just like 5 ally white people, like our former church friend who was like the first person to apologize for Indian residential schools.
Mhm.
You know, so there was like 5 of them. And now,
They were a
like,
dedicated 5.
yeah, right. And even after Occupy, because I thought Occupy was going to be the thing that united us all, but it didn't at all. And in fact, it actually just
Mm-mm.
turned into something that I wish it wouldn't have. But you know, it was Idle No More that I felt like was the one thing that finally united us as people. And for me, it was a really prideful moment when we had that round dance in Chinook, or not Chinook. I always get it mixed
Eaton
up.
Center.
Eden Center, but it's called TD now, right?
Yeah, it's TD now. Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
always
think
get
so.
it mixed up. Anyway, when I went there, I was like crying seeing everybody like holding hands and
It
doing
was such a
this.
beautiful moment.
It really was like I was bawling. I couldn't believe it because at that point I had felt I was with the Liberal Party for a couple of years by then, and I was like talking about Indian residential schools and how this was a problem, and I didn't care if I sounded like some crazy conspiracist because we weren't really open about the gravity of that. Like as a nation, like the CBC would not talk about Indian residential schools or anything. So I was really like frustrated, and Harper was a dick and putting forward
Mm.
all of these awful bills. And you know, Jim Prentice was thought as an ally, and he was an idiot when it came to
Mm-hmm.
Indigenous issues. And yet, you know, here everybody was, you know, toting him around as, oh no, we got our friend of the natives. Like that was enough at that time, right? Nobody had language at all on how to talk about our issues. So,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, when that moment happened, I cried. I was at the hangar though with the Boys and Girls Club. I don't remember. Was that the June 10th or the December 10th teach-in? Was that day?
That was the January, I want to say 10th teaching. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2013.
Yeah, that sounds
2013.
right. That sounds like the
Yeah.
right timeline.
Yeah, it was really, we actually did, so after we did the first sweat, I will say that the day of the rally, I forgot to include this, is that we had a pipe ceremony with the elders, with the police that were going to be involved. Yeah, to have blessings in a good way to move forward. And when we got there, this is really funny. There was like a group of people, and there were people that were threatening to get violent, you know, and we really wanted to keep it peaceful, because the intentions were laid down in that way, to, you know, to do this in a good way. It was done by women peacefully. And so we said no violence. And so there were people like that were, you know, toothed up, that were hiding, and, you know, and then the elder had said, our warriors didn't do that. Our warriors never hid their faces in shame when they went into battle. You show your face. And so, like, we had to send that message that the elder had given us out to the people. And so, you know, telling people to show their face, be prideful, and remember who you are, and, you know, carrying that message, and moving forward. Like, it was a really strong message. You know, it was really important for me to hear that too. And like, that we're going into battle, that this is a different form of battle, and that we are modern day warriors, and to remember that. Yeah.
That's a really important message too. To this day, I struggle with that with other folks who are wannabe allies, but they're white, and I tell them,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care, you know, if you can show your face and not get a job, but like I'm Native, I don't get this, you know, privilege that you have. Stephen Harper literally took the Indian Act list and gave it to CSIS and the RCMP and said, here are your eco-terrorists that you have to watch. Just by
Mm-hmm.
us being on that list. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we weren't even activists. Like I was this dumbass, you know, drafter who drafted wells and pipelines, and I was like dum 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 dum, whatever. This is our life, and you know, now I'm an eco-terrorist. I'm like literally part of the industry that are part of killing people, and not. And I was totally dumb and oblivious, had no idea. So,
Mm-hmm.
but everything changed. Everything changed when I had my daughter. So. Um, 2007 was when I started to really wake up. And I don't know if you know this, but Jackie Crazy Bull was killed on Sam's due date. And that's why,
Wow.
yeah. And that, like, I was really like walking that red road at that time and realizing, you know, the lie of what I'd been told to what the truth was, and
Mm-hmm.
how, you know, it was a big deal to lose faith in everything, like everything that you knew.
Mm-hmm.
It was a
Mm-hmm.
big deal. And then when I had Sam, I lost all faith I had in health. I thought science and health were pretty like standard, but as it turns out, there's something called racism in health
Mm-hmm.
science.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like an idiot, I didn't see that at first, and I just believed wholeheartedly. And now, of course, you and me, we're both raising our children to think and to question, and to with a racism lens. Like when you have that lens, you can't unlearn it. There are a lot of days I wish I could take that, you know, red pill, blue pill. I wish I could, but I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't help. It wouldn't change anything, that's for sure. And I think, anyway, I think it's really important that we point that out, that we don't get the luxury of hiding our face no matter what we're doing, because at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day, we're on a fucking list issued
Mm-hmm.
by the Canadian government telling us whether or not we're Indian. And you know, I hate the fact that there's so many people not on that list who should be on that list. That's why I always acknowledge non-status in my land acknowledgement. The system is so messed up, man. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, you with the Aboriginal Peoples Commission, me with the Indigenous Peoples Commission, we've like, it's not like we haven't been at the table to say
Mm-hmm.
this is
Mm-hmm.
wrong. It's just that we're at the table and everyone else sitting there is not listening.
Mm-hmm. 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 Exactly. It's like we've been going through this for years. I think I was in the APC, I want to say in 2006 to 2009. And, you know, it's just frustrating trying to push things through at those levels and get the kind of, you know, support that you need, um, you know, for these issues that affect our people. And it really just, it felt frustrating. It really, really felt frustrating within the party. And so like, I just, you know, yeah, it's like, you know, when it's time to go, you know, when it's time to go. Yeah. Or you feel
Yeah.
like you could be, you could be more useful elsewhere, you know? And,
Well,
it was hard. It was really hard because I had kind of groomed myself. I actually, my major goal in life was I wanted to be a member of parliament.
yeah,
I really wanted to promote change. I really wanted to work for the people because I was raised with the understanding that public service is the highest honor that you can give for your nation and for your citizens, you know, and I still believe that to some level. I don't know if that's that naivety in me or that golden hope, but or those rose-colored glasses. Um, but yeah, that's what I was on my journey, and I really thought that that's where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And now, kind of taking a step back and seeing the different levels of look at Jody Rabel Wilson.
yeah,
She is an amazing powerhouse who was completely trampled on and brought down.
yep,
And then the limitations within being an independent within Parliament. Like, it's just, you can't do anything in this system because it's meant to not work.
exactly.
Yeah. And so here I sit trying to figure out what to do, what I can do to change things. And it's really frustrating. It's frustrating. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
we
no,
have our elections coming up on the Bloods in Kainai very, very, very shortly. And it's frustrating because it's not going to be any different. Like, this election change will just be another exchange of, we hopefully, a new chief and new councillors, but it's just still the same corrupt system that operates underneath within the Indian Act, and their whole job is to uphold the Indian Act and keep our people suppressed. And so again, what do? I
well, I feel you. I really feel you. So when we did our action on Saturday in support of the Mi'kmaq, there was supposed to be a policy discussion, and I just sent my regrets and said, I think we just need way more anti-racism training and Indigenous education before we can even possibly talk about the, shortcomings of our policy process. I mean, I put forward policies and got almost 0 votes. If it wasn't for me voting, it wouldn't have had a vote, because
Wow.
it's not for the irony is it is for all of Canada, but all of Canada doesn't see it that way, obviously, right? So it's frustrating, and I don't know what the right answers are, because I thought I could get elected. I ran twice, and I didn't get community support, and I didn't get votes, and I didn't get endorsements, and so the message was clear. And look at, like you were talking about Jody Wilson-Raybould, like, I mean, here's the most accomplished person you could possibly have. She told the truth, was honorable, honored her people as well as all of Indigenous people for Canada, and got kicked in the face over and over and over. Like, it's shocking. So for me, my job was to promote her from like 2013 up until this SNC Lavalin thing happened. And when it happened, I actually did a whole episode on how it feels like when your mom and dad break up. Because that's how it felt. That's exactly how it felt. Because I had my Native mom and I had my white dad, and they're fighting like fucking idiots, looking like idiots. Well, and she wasn't. I'm not going to lie, she wasn't. Neither was my mom. But it's that bigger picture that it's just such a Canada story that a white man cannot handle an Indigenous woman's truth. It's just, that's Canada wrapped up in like a simple, so it was traumatizing watching this all over again. And then when the election happened, I'm not going to stop, the opposite. I was like so proud of her. I was proud to be a part of the team that brought her to get elected at all. And then when she got into office and told the truth and did the right thing, she got kicked in the face for it. And then by the very people who I'm supposed to help get elected. Sucked. It was, again, it was the worst. It was the worst. And it's like, I have this MMIW policy and we need the 231 calls to justice. So it's like, fine, I'll jump through the hoops with you. I'll do it. But
it's frustrating. It's frustrating to know that you have to do that in order to try to even get your policies heard, even to have those issues even presented, because normally they would be filtered out and they wouldn't even be in their face at all.
Yeah.
I totally feel you on that. Like, yeah.
And I wish the other parties were better. But like, I went to this one conversation with this Dimitri and Yves Gagnon, and I talked about UNDRIP, because they're talking about Palestine, and I'm like talking about UNDRIP, and they don't understand how the two correlate at all.
Wow.
No concept of it. And I'm like, how are you guys going to be helping me in my party, or in a party, I should say, that party? And then our candidate for our area was like, natives just need to pull up their bootstraps and assimilate, so I was like, well, I can't vote.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. Like, that's impossible. So it sucks. I hate colonial politics. And then people are like, oh, but Jagmeet Singh. And I'm like, yeah, the guy who endorsed Rachel Notley, who like in front of Evans Yellow Old Woman, after he did the land acknowledgement, was like, build that pipe. No concept of sovereignty issues. And John Horgan and the Wet'suwet'en, no concept of, Indigenous sovereignty, even despite Supreme Court cases over it. So I just don't have any faith in a single colonial party at this point. Like, they just cannot, as brilliant as they are, they can go to school for a million years like Elizabeth May. She still doesn't really get Indigenous issues. Not really. So it's like, I don't know what to do with these people. And I'm not going to lie, even within the party, when we talk about anti-racism, it's still different than Indigenous issues. There's racism, and that helps all of Canada to understand and unpack that. But Indigenous sovereignty is different. it is a form of racism 100%, but it's not the whole package. Like, I have sometimes the brown and the black people within the party or in my, so-called activist circle sometimes be the worst racists because they don't understand Indigenous issues. So it's like, it's so isolating trying to develop these allies. And then when I ran, it was really clear to me a lot of the people that claim to be an ally, would never endorse because, well, I don't want to upset this person or I don't want to upset this person. So I can't really, I can't be seen as political. So, my nonprofit won't let me. And it's like, okay, so you don't have a backbone, one.
Yes.
And two, so like it was a real eye opener, and it was actually one of our past candidates. He said every single Canadian should run for office at least once in their life to know who their actual friends are, and it's true. It's 100% true.
Yeah, and you went through it twice. So
I went through it twice. Yeah.
You went through it once, and you're like, I'll go back again.
Yeah, but I honestly don't believe that ever get greenlit by the federal Liberal Party, though, because they have a really extreme vetting process. And like, you can have one of the most like perfect candidates, and honestly, if there's someone within the party that doesn't like you, you don't get the green light. It's really that simple. And as you know, being in the party, you make enemies. And you went through the Chrétien Martin years, and that was like ugly.
Wow. Yes. I went through the transition, Chrétien Martin. Like that's, my liberalization goes way back into the early 2000s. Like I was very party involved for a really long time. And again, like that's what I thought I was going to be going into was, politics. And I thought that this was really important. I mean, and I shouldn't say that it's not, because it really, really is, because that is how the decisions go forward that legislate the policies that affect us.
Yep.
And us not having that voice at the table. And I commend you for being there and clawing your eyes out through the process, but being there and providing that that voice is so necessary. And I really just applaud you for that.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome back anytime.
I sometimes I think about it and then I'm like, wow. And then I'm like, no.
Yeah, no, just spend 5 minutes with me. We'll bring up all those past traumas from the Martin and Chrétien days for you.
I'm like, wow, do I really miss policy convention?
No.
Yeah, and I'm nerdy like that, like I love policy and I love politics, and I don't like band politics, though. I don't like band politics, I will say that. But yeah, I've always been a political hound, and watching the political debates of late has been like my Super Bowl, popcorn and watching the idiots in the US go back and forth.
Okay, so this for real happened this morning. So I always watch SNL the day after. And so we're watching, and we had this proud parenting moment when the Weekend Update came on, and Sam was like, "Oh, I love this part," and my husband and I looked at each other like, "Oh, we're succeeding as a family." So we're watching SNL, and it like dawned on me that there's this Saturday, and then the next Saturday, and then there's the election. So like if the US voters pull their shit together, they could actually, like, we could have only one more SNL with Trump if they vote if they vote for Biden. I hate saying the right way, but like, can we all agree Trump is the worst thing on the planet? Like,
yes,
right?
By far.
I don't know.
Yeah, I actually am a U.S. citizen, and so I exercise my political right to vote, and I do, and I have already. Oh, what did I do? Oh, there we go. And I sent my ballot in. So I voted, the right way.
God. Thank God.
And I encouraged my father, who lives across seas, to vote, to make sure that he did it, and all of my family that can. And so just, we can't have 4 more years of Trump, and just, I mean, that goes into how Jason Kenney and the UCP government is banking on the Trump getting in so that the Keystone XL pipeline can go full throttle. It's incredulous. It is incredulous. I just, and a few weeks ago on Treaty 7 territory, there were chiefs from Treaty 6 and Treaty 8 that were here signing a memorandum of understanding with TC Energy, which was the former TransCanada, in pursuit of the Keystone XL pipeline. It's just, what really upsets me is that our elected leadership make these huge deals on behalf of the nations without doing any consultation to the nation, without presenting to them what's going to happen. And ultimately, like, we have no say, and it's going to affect us, do or die. We as Bloods, there was very little consultation about the fracking that happened on our First Nation. And it's still, like the oil industry in that area, I think it was a subsidiary company, and they got sold off, blah, blah, blah. But again, we still have that plant going.
Yeah.
It's just, it's so frustrating. So I'm really, really, really hoping that Trump is not voted back in, and that the I'm just so tired of racism being so prevalent in our society, and it being okay to treat people like they're less than human just because they have a different color of skin. I never thought in my lifetime or my kids' lifetime that we would have to face the same kind of issues that were going on in the 1950s or in the 1900s. It just astounds me. Like,
honestly, Autumn, I thought after the TRC, we would quit debating anything about the Indigenous portfolio. I thought we would be getting, the land acknowledgement would, basically expose the stolen land. And we would be talking about the stolen land and, and equity in resource development. And like, that's what I thought. But, you talk about naivety and rose-colored glasses, like, and the irony is I thought when I had given up all hope, I watched SNL and I actually cried, because I'm like, fuck, man, in less than in less than 2 weeks, this could be over. I mean, it's not over, you know what I mean, but that bigger picture of the worst thing ever. But you know what? I honestly feel like Canada's going in that direction right now too. Because what always happens historically, through politics, this isn't a I love Justin thing that's I'm saying, but it's historically the Liberals either don't show up to vote or give some to the NDP, which split the vote enough that the Conservatives get back in. And we're heading down that direction again, where the pendulum is going to swing towards the Conservatives again. And, look at these idiots that are like Trump, Jason Kenney, those types of people. The only reason why Jim Prentice isn't our Indian Affairs guy right now is because he died, not because, he always have that role forever until they decide. So I don't know. And I know they completely deny anything about Indigenous issues unless we're willing to be like pro resource extraction. And the Roy Whitneys, the blood
Troy Foxes,
Roy Foxes, sorry. Like these chiefs will always say yes. And and I don't even blame them. Because I know how the stupid Indian Act works, and really they're just Indian agents. Under the Indian Act, that's their job, is to do that. And the system is so messed up. And then Canadians are just like, dum, Tim Hortons.
Yeah.
Like, you don't care.
And it's just like they dangle economic development, resource development. Like, look, if you don't sign on to this deal, then your people won't have money. Your people won't have this, and yeah, I mean, it's really frustrating because there's not a lot of opportunity that is provided to the nations to create different development, right? The limitations within the Indian Act are so expansive that, you can't even get bylaws for your dogs. It doesn't even make any sense. And so Seth Cardinal on Saturday pointed out about how his community over in Sutina is being hailed as a success because of their economic development. But again, it's what was sold out to create that economic development is not being discussed. The fact that they have given away and surrendered their rights in order to create economic development. Nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, and it's not okay. Can I tell folks who are online about all of these like so-called MOUs? I'm like, nothing has been done legally in Canada, because no matter what you sign today, whether it was that deal or whether it was this deal, it's all under duress. Mm-hmm. Every single thing is signed under duress, and we know in law that nothing is legal if it's signed in duress. But mm-hmm. everything has been. And yet Canada still doesn't get the whole stolen land or nothing. And they just keep taking and taking and taking. And the irony is the economy is collapsing right now. And I feel like this is like a possible opportunity to finally just get rid of all of these people who came here for money and jobs. There is none. You can leave now. Go. And I hate to be that way, but like they're not cleaning up their oil, they're not cleaning up their contaminated land, they're not cleaning the contaminated water. They're just gonna, pick up shop and leave.
Yeah.
And I actually see like white people being all sad that, towns are closing, and I'm like, shut up. The only reason why that town exists was so that you could exploit the indigenous people. You probably murdered how many women around that town in order for you to even live there. And now you're leaving. Boo fucking who? Where are the resources to the indigenous people, and how do you give back to people who have died? Like, I don't know if I told you, I went down to the Indian residential school, the Dunbow, and it's on private land, and the guy won't give access to let anybody go there.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
So we talk about stolen land, like the Red Deer Industrial School that had some of the highest amount of Indigenous deaths, that's on private property. One, I don't know how a farmer can just farm over dead Indigenous kids, but they seem to do it no problem. But two, if we're going to talk about land back, shouldn't that be like number one on the goal list?
Definitely. Like it floors me to see a homeless Canadian. It just floors me to see a homeless First Nations person. Yep. Like, that should not exist. Like, homelessness did not exist in any sort of way, and the fact that our land base is so small in comparison to the rest of Canada. What is like 0.02% of the land base is for First Nations, and the rest was taken over by Canada. And even the reserves that we did get when we signed treaty were, taken down, were illegally sold away by the Indian agents, were taken up by Mormons that would never leave Cardston. Part of the agreement with the Mormons staying was that they would never put, a permanent building on the land. And that was that was done away like the first year that was there.
I wonder if they'd come after me if I said these words. What if I blow up your temple in Cardston?
Oh my God. Actually, so when I was a little kid, so the first time I came to Canada, we came across the border from the States from Browning. And I remember coming across and seeing that huge temple. And I'm like, oh, what is that? Like, it's just in the middle of the prairie, right? And my cousins and my brothers, being older brothers and cousins, were like, you know what? You better stay away from there. They sacrifice a native every day at noon when the bells go off. And I really thought, they said they just throw them off the top, and he went, okay, I was 8 years old. So, I was very impressionable.
Yeah,
but it's
but
stuck
to
in my
be
head.
fair to you, with the whole Illuminati, like I believe the Catholic Church like literally brought the devil here, and all of this devil sacrifice crap. So
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't like it. I'm like, I don't know. There might be a thread of truth there.
Well, you know, my mom went through the whole Mormon process, and she was telling me about some really crazy Mormon stories about, you know, them having to do confessions for their relatives' past lives that maybe want to become Mormon. You know, like at, you know, 9 years old, having to go through that. Like, that's kind of crazy. I mean, so yeah, but yeah, the Mormon Church, you know, like it's just, its prevalence on the South, and the fact that our reserve used to go all the way down to the border and all the way across. And, you know, there's been recently, it's been celebrated about the big win, the big land claim win, of us getting it back, saying that, yes, you know, Canada did owe us more land. But the area that is not in the big claim is the part through Waterton, through that whole area. And the judge had stated that because the claim was filed in the 60s, past, there was like it was like 9 months prior past the due date to be able to apply to that from the treaty time in the 1800s. It was just ridiculous, you know, like, so, I mean, even when we are going to court and we are battling and we are doing all the legal processes and necessary things to get the justice that we deserve as Indigenous First Nations Canadian, like in Canada, I didn't think Canadians, in Canada, that we're not going to get it. There's not going to be resolve.
Yep.
So, you know, our land base, that's what makes the strength of the people, is having that land, and you take it away from the people and they have no opportunity, no development. Then again, like they are still carrying out the same agenda to kill the Indian.
Yep.
It's just, they're doing it politely and in different ways.
Yep. Yeah. No, I tell people it was, who was it? I think it was DJ Indian, Ian Campano, who said, you know, we live in a post-apocalyptic state as Indigenous people. And that hit me for like 2 weeks, where it was like, I can't say he's wrong. I can't disprove that. And, you know, that really amplified, like, we talk about genocide through the TRC and through the National Inquiry, but it's just like that, it's that constant genocide, you know, from the Indian Act, rooted from that all the way to today, you know, the racism in the health industry and the justice system, so that we die. And there's no resolution to any of it, right? So that ongoing genocide, like it's really serious. And the ongoing genocide of stealing our land, like it's constant with that stupid justice system. I don't know if you know, so I'm a Yellowknife Dene, but at one point in time they actually said that, oh no, they're all extinct. They called my people extinct.
Wow.
Fuckers.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That is really crazy.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
We could talk all day, and I can't believe how quickly our time has gone by already.
Oh, wow.
I know. So we can keep talking, but I definitely wanted to plug any of the initiatives or projects that you're working on. So did you want to talk about any of them?
Oh, sure. Yeah, because we talked about so much stuff, but I didn't really talk about any of that stuff. So in my other days, my sister and I, Melreen Saloy, Eaglespeaker, who is also the owner, creator, designer of Native Diva Creations, this amazing native jewelry company. I'm not wearing her stuff today. Usually I am. So the two of us, we combined our skills, and we created a Christmas holiday craft show 6 years ago. And we just threw it together in a month, saying, you know, hey, we know a ton of people that are amazing artists that need this opportunity, because number one, it's very expensive to rent retail space. And if you're a First Nations person, you already have so many barriers for economic success that you don't have the credit normally afforded to other people in Canada, to be able to do this. And so we wanted to create a space for artisans to come, no matter what their skill level, if from businesses to, first timers, to be able to come and to be able to sell their goods. Yeah. And so one of the things is that my sister and I, we've kept the price for the tables super cheap and super minimal, to basically cover lights on. And the reason that we do that is because we want to make it accessible for everyone. We even have elders pricing, which is very minimal. And we have sponsor and elder packages so people can help out elders that can't afford to, get a table at Christmas time. In the past, we've had our event at the Kirby Center. But this year, due to COVID protocols, we've had to make a number of changes. And so we're moving our location this year to the Marda Loop Community Association. And it will be taking place. So it's the Authentically Indigenous Holiday Craft Market. It will be taking place December 4th and 5th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And normally you can just come, but this year, due to COVID, we are selling tickets online to be able to attend. So it's $2. We're asking to keep kids this year at home though. So 12 and under, we're asking to keep kids home again, due to COVID. Just COVID changes everything.
I hate it. I hate it. Yeah. I know the key word in the industry is pivoting, but it's like, it sucks because, who can just have a babysitter for your kids sometimes, right? And especially with COVID, like, how do you even juggle that? Anyway.
So if you go on to our website which is authenticallyndig.com, we have information available on the website to 1, be a vendor, 2, be a volunteer, or 3, to purchase a ticket for the event. And so all the links are on there, or you can find us through Eventbrite as well. And so we're really happy that we're able to create a showcase this year, and we're going to be featuring lots of amazing artisans that live within Treaty 7, but may not necessarily be from Treaty 7. And again, due to COVID, we're just trying to keep it local this year. So we will also be doing a spring show. I'll say that we'll be doing a spring show, and we're hoping that COVID will be lifted by summertime so that we can come back and do a full summertime show as well. Because there's just so much gifted talent in our community that needs to be showcased and highlighted. And I'm just so happy that we're able to do that and to help so many different entrepreneurs become successes.
Yes. Well, and your sister, one of my favorite pair of earrings that I made the mistake of giving away, but you know how when people are like, I really like your earrings, and you're like, there you go, here are my earrings. My favorite pair she ever made me was my Princess Leia ones. I miss them so much. Yep.
Well, a big shout out to my sister. Actually, yesterday she won the International Indigenous Accessories Designer of the Year Award. So yes, I'm super proud of my sister, Native Diva Creations, and all of her amazing hard work that she's been doing. And, she's dynamo. She's such a creative powerhouse, and I'm so lucky to have her in my family. So
no, she's awesome. One of my favorite pairs of earrings that I've kept and I will not give away no matter how much somebody else likes them is the orange shirt they won. So I have those. Like, I don't think she made them for anybody except me, because she made a bunch of pins for a school, and I'm like, can you just make a pair of earrings for me? And she did it. So like, she's so great, and I love her work so much.
Yeah.
So
her custom work is amazing. My favorite are the hoops with the rhinestones. Like, I love those. I'm always rocking her hoops and rhinestones, and
my girl, she loves the headbands with the rhinestones, and then she did ones with like the ears.
Yes, she's doing a whole series of earmuffs right now too. So I'm just so excited. I can't wait. I love the earmuffs. I love wintertime and like earmuffs and all that other stuff.
I know, they're so fun. We should wear them the next rally we have.
Right? Like just a whole powerhouse native diva army.
Yeah, well, I'm down for that.
I'm sure my sister would be down for it too.
Yeah, no, we're down for that. So just shout out to you. We love you.
Yes, definitely. And yeah, like this is really great. And I just want to say thank you for doing this and giving me this opportunity to talk, because this is actually my first kind of interview podcast that I've ever done, that I've ever agreed to participate in.
Oh my God, I'm so lucky. Look, but I'm going to call it the debut.
Yeah, it is my podcast debut.
It is the debut. Oh, that's amazing. But really, there's so many cool artists out there, or podcast folks. I don't know what you call us. Podcasters? I don't know what you call us. So I'm really glad that you're on mine, because I think a lot of people need to hear from you and need to hear, what's going on in Autumn's world. And I know for me, I wish I had more people that understood politics, the Indian Act. I have lots of natives that hate me for being a part of these colonial parties, but it's back to the whole, if you can try to shut the door on a really shitty idea and keep it shut,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't you want to do that when you know that there's like an army of new Indigenous that are willing to push on that door?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
happy to walk away. You guys got this. I'm good.
Well, my family was pretty happy when I was not being a liberal, because they were like, "Oh, good, we don't have to get liberal memberships this year."
Right. I know my family, my husband especially. He's like, "Don't you dare renew me," and I'm like, "Fine, I won't." And but it's hard, right? Because it's like it's so easy to be like, if I grabbed a whole bunch of liberal memberships for the people I know and just told them how to vote and like basically made them do it, but you can't make a person a liberal in Alberta that doesn't want to be a liberal.
Mm-hmm. It honestly takes a very special kind of person to be a liberal in Alberta, and it takes guts, it takes grit,
Yep.
it takes a giant backbone, and it takes like duck feathers, because you got to have fucking duck feathers to have all that water wash off of you, because you got it from all different levels. Like, it is ridiculous.
We're Native women. We have all those things and more.
Right. Maybe this conversation resparks something. We'll see what happens.
Oh my God, yes. Come back.
I say, I know it's needed, and it's just, it gets so hard and you get so apathetic after a while.
It's
and
so
like
hard.
Banging your head on the wall.
Yep.
And it's hard. Like, I know that there was, like, going back to I Don't Know More, I know that there was a lot of people that through it all, and through the passing of the omnibus bills and the carrying on of the Harper government, that they really felt like anything that they did wasn't heard. But I just want this, all of that work that we did, laying that foundations, it's just it's an ongoing process, and it doesn't change overnight. I like, part of me wishes that we could have a V for Vendetta revolution, and Canada is different, and we have a new sovereign government headed by First Nations leadership. Wouldn't that be amazing? But I feel like that's a science fiction novel.
I know.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. And then so yesterday or something was the UN Day, and so the Liberals put out their nice little talking points of how much they love the UN. And it's like, yeah, I know, because the UN has yet to really penalize Canada for their ongoing genocide of Indigenous people. Like, and it doesn't matter who's in charge, Conservatives, the red or the orange, it doesn't matter who's in charge. The genocide is continuing. As long as there's a Canada, there's a genocide against Indigenous people. As long as there's an Indian Act, which is embedded in our Canadian Constitution, like, everything's under duress here, everything. And I just hate it. And I hate that people are so blind to it. So anyway, having someone like you on this show that understands what I'm talking about, like all 10 of us in Canada that seem to understand this.
Hey, other 8 of us.
Right?
Yeah,
We'll have a Zoom
very
party.
few. All right. If anybody wants to watch the election with me,
Yeah,
that'll be
right?
coming up too, right? Like that again, the Super Bowl will be coming up for political wonkies. So
Yeah, maybe we should do that. We should figure out how to do that. I'll think about it. Maybe we can figure out how to
we'll
do
have
it.
a watch party or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, do it that way.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty good. And then just have people coming on, because again, like it is really surprising how much people don't know or understand about political systems and how they actually work in Canada and in the US. And,
And here's your advantage, and I tell this to all natives. So, like, you door knock, and people don't know the difference between school boards, municipal, provincial, federal, and then you and I have to know Indian Act politics and international politics because there are issues. So it's like we have to be uber political, and meanwhile Joe Schmo walking on the sidewalk is like dum 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 dum, keep those immigrants out. Like I'm like, how do you even, where do you even start with someone like that? Where you and I are doing vigils for missing and murdered Indigenous people, and they're just like dum 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 dum, Tim Hortons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim Hortons, which is an American company now, suckers.
They don't know nothing. I don't know what to say, man.
They just want to hang on to that Canadiana farsity of, look at us, we're great, Mountie loving, beaver holding, Canadian, coffee drinking, swigging.
I know.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy. Where people care more about pumpkin spice lattes than they care about genocide of Indigenous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say that it was really disheartening to see and support the Mi'kmaq people this weekend in Calgary. That, and I know that it was during COVID and whatnot too, but I mean, we are pushing for allies, for people to come out and support all of these issues. And there was an outpouring of people through the Black Lives Matter movement attending these rallies saying that, yes, Black Lives Matter. But on Indigenous issues, well, I guess it kind of matters as long as it doesn't affect me in some way or my livelihood down the road. And I guess, yeah, we can infringe upon Indigenous rights because, whatever.
Who cares?
Whatever.
Right.
Who cares? Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that the RCMP, the head of the RCMP, is sitting back and saying, oh, yes, well, we're investigating both sides and seeing the issues and blah, blah, blah. It is so fucking frustrating when at El Pistadog, they had snipers aimed at people praying against the pipeline. That's the difference. It is okay for a huge mob of white commercial fishermen to go attack First Nations people, to go punch their chief, to burn down a fishery that's not even theirs, that's an ally to them. And the RCMP is doing nothing.
Worse.
Justin Trudeau is doing nothing.
I know, it's driving me nuts because we have like the Marshall decision, we have like Supreme Court rulings under their own stupid laws, and they're like, well, maybe we need a mediator. No, you fucking idiots, you need to fucking follow your own fucking laws.
Well, I think you've been trying to mediate for 20 years, trying to decide what was a moderate livelihood. Like, that is just ridiculous. And just thinking about the amount of lobster traps that the Mi'kmaq people have in relation to the amount that the company Clearwater has, it's so gross.
It's sickening. It's like our land. It's like the land that Canada has compared to Indigenous people. It's so grossly disproportionate. How can anyone be proud of the UN that they don't at all intervene in any of this conversation? Like, it's insane to me that we are here. And I don't mean that in an ableism way. Like, I honestly cannot wrap my brain around how people don't see this. You know, I had
Mm-hmm.
to walk this red road and see this like huge disconnect between the average Canadian and Indigenous people. I don't understand how, like, they don't see this. I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the fact too that they turn a blind eye across the nation, where it's happening over in Nova Scotia. You know, there's dwindling moose populations in Quebec and Manitoba. They're trying to protect their livelihood, and yet again, they're not being protected. You know, their interests are not being protected. You know, we as First Nations people are the natural stewards of the lands, and that voice is completely unheard by any level of government, by fisheries, by, you know, by, they're dealing with DFO. And that's the same thing in the West Coast, is that they're again having salmon wars and, you know, being able to have their right to hunt and trap fish. Ridiculous. You know, it's 2020. And the same issues that were existing, I guess, in the 70s are the exact same ones that are happening today.
Yep. Right? And I mean, our ancestors have been talking about these inequities from the start, from since treaty making.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, I mean, sometimes I think, you know, I really wish that our people hadn't been under duress and hadn't been starved out and hadn't been plagued by all of the different diseases that the Europeans brought over, so that we wouldn't have signed Treaty 7. Like, you know, like the signing of Treaty 7 ultimately was the crossing for Canada to be completed, you know, and just think about, just sometimes I just like to imagine, like, if all of Blackfoot country was its own sovereign, you know, nation within, like how different that could be. Again, scientific novel. But just, you know, I just feel that our world would be so much different.
Yep.
If it wasn't driven completely by capitalism and greed and based on all racist ideologies.
Yep. You know, though, the youth, though, they talk about living through all these recessions. They have zero faith in capitalism. Like, capitalism has shot themselves in the foot, that even the white Canadians are like, you know, they're never going to own a house. They're never going to finish paying off their student loans. So they have like zero buy-in to capitalism. So it's like my only hope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think really like the downfall of capitalism is what really needs to happen. Again, that revolution, you know, and just in change in policies, you know, and the fact that we need to go back to taking care of each other and that collectivity that we as humans need. You know, that capitalism and white ideology creates such a disconnect from each other, from the land, from our families,
Mm-hmm.
that we really need just a whole reshaping of society. And, you know, that Blackfoot or Maslow's hierarchy of needs to be revisited and credited to the Blackfoot people for
Yes.
showing how Maslow stole that from us and didn't understand that ourselves as individual wasn't selfish. Ourself as individual was based on everyone, was based together. You know, man, I got dreams.
Yeah, I
I
know,
got
but they're
dreams.
really important dreams, because if we manifest them, I mean, I truly believe if we had sovereignty back and we really took care of ourselves and Canada just played along, like, that's the irony. We just adopt them, they'd learn all our ways, learn our language, and then we'd live together. It's really that simple. But
Mm-hmm.
it's all that control issue, right? And that's why I have a problem with the UN's sustainable development goals, because basically, if you looked at UNDRIP, they're the same. But
Mm-hmm.
white people don't want to give control to Indigenous people, so that's why
Mm-hmm.
their big push is now the you know, these goals, as opposed to UNDRIP. Because if they
Mm-hmm.
legitimately cared about those goals, they'd try to implement UNDRIP, and then those goals would naturally happen. So.
Well, I mean, I do remember when it was implemented in 2009, and it was, such an aspirational document. And it wasn't until I think it was 2011 when Canada and the US signed on to it.
Yep.
But with caveats about what we will believe and what we won't believe. So yes, we believe in Indigenous rights, but just to a little degree, as long as it doesn't infringe upon anything we want to do in Canada and the US.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and we don't need to pay reparations or anything like that. People aren't owed anything.
Yeah, I know. They're starting to finally have that conversation in the US for Black people. And I'm like, we got to extend that conversation to reparations to Indigenous people, because all of these billions and billions and billions of dollars of profit were made off of our lives and our land.
Mm-hmm.
It's so simple.
Mm-hmm. I mean, could you imagine if we won like a court case to say that the Natural Resource Transfer Act of 1935 was null and void, and that First Nations should have control of all of resources, and that we should get back at least just 1% of that amount? Like, we as nations would have no boil water advisories. Like, we wouldn't have any problems with taking care of our people, because we would have the resources and the means to be able to do that. Again, it's about keeping the suppression of the people down and making sure that at the end of the day that we die out as soon as we possibly can.
Yep. And as soon as all the water is totally poisoned, those mofos will go back to England.
I just like going into that whole about like, if the oil companies leave Alberta, yes, please go, but please clean up your abandoned wells. And on your way out, how about we get some government with some balls and actually implement some taxes that at the end of the day will benefit Albertans and our system of healthcare and education. And hey, how about while we're at it, stop trying to throw in religion into our fucking public education system. Oh my God, that's a whole nother like thing that we could go off on.
This is why we homeschool.
This is why we homeschool. Yeah. Today we're going to Banff. What are we going to do? No, we're not going to look at the historic stuff. We're going to look at the concentration camps that existed for the Polish people. Did you know that?
For the Japanese. Yeah.
For the Japanese.
No, for real. But that's the thing, is like the history that they want to teach in school is so stupid and ridiculous and out of touch. Like, we have white people who are like, oh my God, all my white tears, I'm so sad that we did this to you. Okay, great. That's fine. Quit crying and help us like fix it now. Advocate for mental health care that's like culturally appropriate. I should be allowed to smudge anywhere in this fucking country at any given time, and I can't. It's really fucking simple, but I get to hear I'm speaking English in Blackfoot territory. How fucked up is that?
It's such a disconnect in my heart to only have a limited amount of my own language to be able to communicate with my ancestors.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel that. I feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely hurts. It definitely hurts to know that I can't pass that down to my kids and I can't sit down and have a conversation with elders and understand and laugh with them.
Yeah.
Because of that tongue that's been, that they took away the language from my family and from my people. And that my mom can only hear it, but she can't speak it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that, my friend. I'm sorry. I try to talk about it with people, like when I get hired to do like land acknowledgement teachings and that, but I just don't think they get it. And I hope I'm wrong. I know a lot of people listen to this podcast and are like, I learned so much. So I hope they heard it from you. So, because I mean, I hate hearing myself. So sometimes hearing it from someone else helps.
Yeah. Thank you. No,
thank you. Okay, I'm going to go through my ridiculously long exit, but feel free to chime in, okay?
Okay.
Because this is probably the only time you'll hear it too, so.
Okay.
Okay. Indigenous have been talking about our issues, sharing our traumas in reports, commissions, and in public hearings, just so it can be regularly disregarded. No more. Honor our words. Honor the treaties. Listen to politicians and their policies and platforms. If they don't recognize the marginalized in their budget with Gender Equity Plus, if they're cutting violence prevention programs, services, Indigenous education, uterus health choices, gay-straight alliances, lack of human rights for migrants, immigrants, folks with disabilities, know that your vote to that party directly negatively impacts marginalized people. Demand that they implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the multiple reports about child welfare reform and violence prevention. And now we have 231 calls to justice from the National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit. Denying these reports is a form of abuse called gaslighting. Our people are experiencing extreme racism in the educational and health institutions with multiple reports that say the same things. Demand change from election platforms and politicians. If they don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, sexism, they literally have zero business running. Should be understood by all parties and local politicians, community organizations, sports organizations, and more. A really great article I said out loud in episode 62 is Truth Before Truth, How Non-Indigenous Canadians Become Allies. Read it. I want to continue by putting cultural safety into action so that you can create a safer space for Indigenous people, people of color, those with disabilities, LGBTQ2+ to speak. Look at it as first aid for marginalization. First, you have to do something. Having good intentions or white tears is not enough. Take action to make change. Speak out against racism. Ask questions with those with more understanding. Find allies. Create a support system for yourself so that you can advocate for culturally safe approaches, like fucking smudging anywhere. Take responsibility for your own learning. Read, reflect, ask questions. Don't expect this learning to come from Indigenous people when we have commissions, reports, inquiries, and all these things to already educate you with. Take time for self-reflection. Beware of your own assumptions and biases. Question everything you've learned about Indigenous people and take steps to actively disrupt those stereotypes. Commit to lifelong learning. Be prepared to be uncomfortable. Understanding colonialism and the legacy of racism is an ongoing and difficult task. And I want to say thank you to heretohelp.bc.ca, Indigenous people and cultural safety, why I should care about it, for that link. Internalized racism or lateral violence is another form of violence Indigenous and marginalized people experience by the structure of racism imposed on these lands from the Indian Act and Indian residential schools and other land clearing policies. RacialEquityTools.org has some really great resources on what internalized racism is for those who don't know what it is. There's Do's and Don'ts Bystander Interventions by American Friends Service Committee. What to do when you witness instances of racism, anti-trans, anti-Black, anti-Muslim, or any other form of oppressive interpersonal violence and harassment, and to use these tips on intervening. 1, do make your presence known as a witness. If possible, make eye contact with the person being harassed and ask them if they want support. Move closer to yourself, or move yourself closer to the person being harassed. If possible, and you feel that you can do so, create a barrier between the person being harassed and the attacker. If it's safe to do so and the person consents, film or record the incident. It's a lot easier to delete it later than it is to wish you had it on video. Take cues from individuals being harassed. Is the person engaging with the harasser or not? Would you like for me to walk over here? Would you like to move to another train car? Would you like for him to leave you alone? You know, these are things that you can ask, but follow their lead. Notice if the person being harassed is resisting in their own way and honor that. White folks don't tone police a person being harassed. So if I'm being harassed by someone and I say, oh, really? You think it's okay to just talk to Indigenous women that way? Having you shush me is not going to fucking help, and I might throat punch you. Follow up with the individual being harassed when the incident is over and see if they need anything else. So this is a good time for you to give them their card. They will likely be embarrassed, but by giving the card, you are saying, I witnessed what happened. You can call me. We can talk about it. If you choose to press charges, if a video surfaces of the thing, you know, do that. It's a lot easier to throw out that card in 2 weeks than it is to wish you had it. Do what you need to do to be safe. Assess your surroundings. Can you pull in support? Working as a team is a good idea if possible. Can you and the person being harassed move to a safer space? Do not call the police. For many communities experiencing harassment right now, Arab, Muslim, Black, queer, trans, immigrant, Indigenous, the police can cause a greater danger for the person being harassed. Do not escalate the situation. The goal is to get the person being harassed to safety and not incite further violence from the attacker. Don't do nothing. Silence is dangerous. It communicates approval and leaves the victim high and dry. If you find yourself too nervous or afraid to speak out, just move closer to the person being harassed to communicate your support. And teach your kids about accountability in a positive way, because these fucking people are learning it from somewhere, that it's okay to be this way. If you're experiencing emotional distress and want to talk, call the First Nation and Inuit Help for Wellness helpline at 1-855-242-3310. And if you go for help, hopeforwellness.ca, there's a text feature for you as well. Violence is my everyday reality. Every Indigenous generation has faced it. That's why I started this podcast, to speak freely without interruption, without tone police, without leadership shaming, without gaslighting questions, because many people don't want to hear Indigenous opinion, but sure as hell want to tell us theirs, usually by people who know nothing about Indigenous issues, colonialism, constant surveillance of our people, our protests, our vigils, our rights, typical microaggressions, or people dealing with internalized racism, who then become gatekeepers and survive off the status quo, or people who are so in their trauma they stop people from doing the good work and deplete personal resources. Internal and external racism is an everyday reality for Indigenous people, and it's sad I needed a podcast for a boundary to be heard, but here we are. I want to say thank you to my ancestors, my granny, my mom, of what strength looks like through your example. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt and white. My stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is through your Austrian family and roots, and teaching me how to be a proud Calgarian. It is through her I am a second generation proud Calgarian. I want to say thank you to Darcy for producing and editing this show. On top of being my husband, my childhood friend, and the father of our child, he's supported me down my journey of the Red Road. He's witnessed decades of racism and sexism. And to our child, who we are blessed to learn from daily, we're honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better and stronger person. I hope my daughter and my family will be proud in the future of us trying to discuss these present day issues in a way that they can understand. And thank you again to my Patreon account supporters, Adam, Agent Indian. This is my first time putting Agent Indian, so I'm kind of fangirling. Alexandria, Beatrice, Ben, Beth, Brian, Kat, Celine, Christina, Crystal, Diana, Jacqueline, Jana, Jenny, Jessica, Jocelyn, Judy, Karen, Kathy, Kenna, Leah, Lisi, Marisa, Melissa, Morami, Natalie, Nathan, Rebecca, Rochelle, The Sprawl, Shara, Sharon, Tammy, Tiffany, Vanessa, Veronica. Thank you all for signing up. If you did one donation or did many for financial reasons, you had to quit, just know I appreciate every bit of support you gave us. And if you value listening and can afford to give, thank you. But those who can't, please feel free to email me at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or your questions. You can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcast, or my social media for the pinned posts. And I want to end by giving side-eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not tradish. And my beautiful cousin would respond, or you'd be in my dish. Thanks for being Thanks for being on my show, Autumn. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Michelle. This was great. I really loved it. And I afterwards, as we were talking, I thought about all the many things that I forgot to talk about, but we will talk about again.
Right? Now we need part 2 and part 3 and part 4.
Part 2, where we talk about the round dances, where we talk more about what happened in the malls and all the flash mobs and everything. And
oh my God. And the surveillance, like when we said it, I was like, oh my God, we could do a whole episode on like recently and back in Idle No More, all of those crazy things that happened to us, but nobody believes us. I mean, there's books on it now, but it's not like anybody reads, apparently.
Yeah, that's very true. To be continued.
To be continued. Okay, thanks, Autumn. I appreciate it.
Have a beautiful, blessed evening.
Oh, you too. And thanks again for coming on my show.
My pleasure.